The dust devil kicked up red Arizona dirt as Jacob Thornton squinted toward the horizon, watching storm clouds gather like dark fists against the bruised sky. His ranch, what little remained of it after the drought, stretched lonely and parched beneath the October sun. At 32, he'd built this place from nothing after the war took his parents and the fever took his brother. Now the land was trying to take it all back. He was mending the fence line when he saw her stumbling across his property, her buckskin dress torn and bloodied, long black hair matted with dirt and what looked like dried blood. She moved like a wounded animal, fierce even in her desperation. One hand clutched to her side, while the other gripped a knife with wavering determination. Before I continue, I want to ask you something important. Would you take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like? It truly matters to us and motivates us to keep bringing you quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments. Jacob dropped his tools and approached slowly, hands visible. Easy now, I'm not gonna hurt you. She spun toward him, the knife raised despite the way she swayed on her feet. Her eyes were the color of honey held up to sunlight, burning with defiance even as her body betrayed her weakness. "Stay back, white man. You're bleeding," he said simply, nodding toward the crimson spreading across her ribs. "That needs tending. I need nothing from you." But her words slurred, and a moment later, her knees buckled. Jacob caught her before she hit the ground, careful with her injured side. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd thought, maybe 22, 23, with high cheekbones and a mouth set in a stubborn line, even in unconsciousness. The knife tumbled from her fingers. He carried her inside his cabin, laying her on his bed, the only real furniture he owned, besides a chair and table. The wound in her side wasn't deep, but it was infected, the flesh around it angry and hot. He'd seen enough battlefield injuries to know she'd die without care. Jacob heated water, gathered clean cloth and whiskey. When he returned, her eyes were open, watching him with the wariness of a trapped hawk. "I'm going to clean this," he said, showing her the supplies. "It'll hurt. Everything hurts." Her voice was raspy. "Why did you bring me inside?" "Because leaving you to die didn't sit right." She studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Do it." The infection had set in deep. Jacob worked as gently as he could, but when he pressed the whiskey-soaked cloth to the wound, she hissed through her teeth, her hand shooting out to grip his wrist hard enough to leave marks. "Go slow," she gasped. "It hurts." "I'll die before I hurt you more than necessary," he replied, meeting her gaze. "But this poison has to come out, or you'll lose more than pride." Something flickered in her eyes, surprise, maybe, or the faint beginning of trust. She released his wrist and turned her face to the wall, breathing hard as he worked. When he finished bandaging her, she was pale and trembling, sweat beading her forehead. Jacob brought water and made her drink, then stepped back. "What's your name?" he asked. She was silent so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "Ayana. It means eternal blossom." The way she said it carried both pride and pain, as if the name belonged to someone she used to be. "Jacob Thornton. This is my ranch, or what's left of it." He gestured around the sparse cabin. "You can stay until you heal. I have no way to pay you. Didn't ask for payment." Ayana's jaw tightened. I won't be used as—" "Stop," Jacob said, his voice firm but not harsh. "You're not property. You're a person, and you're hurt. That's all that matters here." She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. After a moment, she lay back down, exhaustion claiming her. Over the next 3 days, Fever ravaged her body. Jacob stayed close, changing bandages, forcing water past her cracked lips, bathing her forehead with cool cloth when she burned, and piling blankets when she shivered. She spoke in her sleep, sometimes in English, sometimes in Apache, words that sounded like prayers or curses, or memories too painful for waking hours. On the fourth morning, the fever broke. He woke to find her sitting up, her honey eyes clear and fixed on him where he'd fallen asleep in the chair beside the bed. "You stayed," she said quietly. "Couldn't very well leave you to wrestle death alone." "Why?" The question held genuine confusion. "My people and yours, we're not friends. You could have let me die, or worse." Jacob stood, rolling the stiffness from his shoulders. "My mama taught me that the measure of a man isn't who he helps when it's easy. It's who he helps when it costs him something." He moved to the stove, stirring the pot of rabbit stew he'd kept warm. "Besides, seems to me you've already paid a high enough price for whatever brought you here." Ayana was quiet as he brought her a bowl. She ate slowly, and he noticed she used her left hand, keeping the right one pressed to her healing side. "Soldiers attacked our camp," she said suddenly. "They were drunk, celebrating something. My father tried to stop them from taking my sister." Her voice went flat, distant. "They shot him. When I fought back, one of them did this." She touched her side. "I killed him with his own knife. Then I ran." Jacob absorbed this, his jaw tight. He'd heard stories, too many stories, of such things. The frontier was beautiful and brutal in equal measure, and men far from civilization often forgot they were supposed to be civilized. "Your sister?" he asked. Ayana shook her head once, sharply. That was answer enough. They sat in silence, the weight of her loss hanging between them like smoke. Finally, Jacob spoke. "You can stay as long as you need. I could use help around here, if you're willing once you're stronger. I won't ask more than honest work." "You trust me?" She sounded almost amused. "I could cut your throat in the night." "Could," he agreed, "but I don't think you will. I see a woman worth saving, even if she doesn't see it herself yet." Something cracked in her carefully controlled expression, just for a moment. Then she nodded. "I'll work. I won't be a burden." Recovery was slow. Ayana pushed herself too hard at first, reopening the wound when she tried to help with the horses. Jacob found her in the barn, leaning against a post, breathing hard and clutching her side. "Stubborn doesn't make you heal faster," he said, taking her arm and guiding her back to the cabin. "Weak doesn't make me worth keeping around." He stopped, turning her to face him. "You think I kept you alive just to get a farmhand? Ayana, you could lay in that bed for a month and I wouldn't regret a single day of it." She stared at him like he'd spoken in a foreign tongue. "I don't understand you, Jacob Thornton." "Don't need to understand, just need to trust." He helped her sit. "Now rest. The work will wait." Gradually, she healed. As autumn deepened, she began helping in earnest, cooking, mending, tending the small vegetable garden he'd barely kept alive. She moved through his space, like water finding its course, efficient and quiet. But Jacob found himself watching her more than he should. The way she hummed sometimes while working, a melody that sounded like wind through canyon stones. The fierce concentration on her face when she practiced throwing the knife she'd kept. Her aim getting better each day. The rare smile that transformed her whole face when one of the horses nickered at her approach. "You're staring again," she said one evening, not looking up from the shirt she was mending. "Sorry." "Are you?" Now she did look up, and there was something playful in her expression, that made his chest tight. "No," he admitted, "not particularly." She set down the sewing. "This isn't wise." "Probably not. I'm Apache, you're white. People. I don't give a damn what people think," Jacob said, surprised by the vehemence in his own voice. "Out here, there's just you and me and what we make of it." Ayanna stood, crossing to where he sat at the table. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touched the scar above his eyebrow. "How did you get this?" "Shrapnel. War. I was 17 and stupid enough to think I understood what I was fighting for. And do you now?" "No, but I understand what I'm living for." He caught her hand, pressing it to his chest where his heart hammered. "This, right here. You make me feel like maybe all the losing wasn't for nothing." She leaned down, her breath warm against his face. "Jacob." Thunder cracked across the sky like a rifle shot, making them both jump. Within seconds, rain began hammering the roof, wind howling around the cabin's corners. "Storm," Ayanna said unnecessarily, moving to the window. Lightning illuminated her profile, and Jacob saw her tense. "This is bad." She was right. Within an hour, the storm had grown into a monster, wind tearing at the cabin, rain coming down in sheets so thick it was like standing behind a waterfall. Something crashed in the barn, probably the loose door he'd been meaning to fix, and Jacob grabbed his hat. "I have to check on the horses." "Not alone." Ayanna was already reaching for her shawl. "They're terrified of storms." They ran together through the deluge, mud sucking at their boots, wind trying to tear them apart. In the barn, both horses were wild-eyed, the door indeed torn loose and banging violently. Jacob grabbed for it while Ayanna went to calm the animals, speaking in Apache, her voice low and steady beneath the storm's roar. He'd just secured the door when lightning struck so close the world turned white. The crack was deafening, and one of the beams overhead groaned ominously. Ayanna's scream cut through the noise. Jacob spun to find her pressed against the back wall, the gelding rearing above her, hooves coming down. He lunged, shoving her aside, taking the blow meant for her. The hoof caught his shoulder, sending him crashing into the stall door. Pain exploded through his left side, bright and consuming. "Jacob!" Ayanna's hands were on him, her face above his, terror replacing the fierce control she usually wore. "Jacob, answer me!" "I'm okay," he managed, though breathing felt like knives. "You?" "You fool," she said, and she was crying, he realized with shock. Fierce Ayanna, who never cried, was crying for him. "You could have been killed. Couldn't let you get hurt." He tried to sit up, gasped at the pain. "Not you." She helped him stand, taking most of his weight as they stumbled back to the cabin. The storm raged on, but inside felt suddenly small and intimate as she helped him to the bed, his bed, which had become hers, which was now theirs in this moment. "Your shoulder," she said, carefully working his shirt off. The bruising was already spectacular, purple and black, spreading across his chest. She ran gentle fingers over the area, testing for breaks. "I think it's not broken, but you'll be in pain for weeks. Worth it. Don't say that." "It's true." He caught her hand. "Ayanna, I meant what I said before. You've woken something in me I thought died with my family. This ranch, this life, it was just existing until you came. Now it feels like living." She made a sound between a laugh and a sob. The orphan rancher trapped in a storm with a fierce Apache girl, and he says I awoke his soul? "Your fire awoke my soul," he corrected softly. "And I'm not sorry for it." She leaned down then, pressing her forehead to his. I'm not sorry either. I thought I wanted to die. That day I stumbled onto your land. But you showed me. You made me want to live again. The kiss when it came was gentle, tentative, both of them wounded in different ways, but healing here in this small shelter against the storm. Her hair fell around them like a curtain, and Jacob thought he'd never seen anything more beautiful than Ayana's face in the lamplight. Tears on her cheeks and hope in her eyes. Together, he whispered. Together, she agreed. The storm lasted 3 days, pinning them inside with nothing but each other and the slowly dwindling supplies. Jacob's shoulder kept him mostly immobile, so Ayana tended him the way he'd tended her, with patience and care, and a growing tenderness that made simple things like having his bandages changed feel impossibly intimate. They talked for hours, trading stories of loss and survival. He told her about watching his parents' wagon burn, about holding his brother as fever took him, about the hollow years after, when he'd built this ranch just to have something to do with his hands. She told him about her childhood, about learning to track and hunt beside her father, about the joy of her sister's laughter and the songs her mother taught her, about the slow erosion of her people's way of life and the anger that burned in her chest like coals. Sometimes I hate what I feel for you, she admitted on the second night, lying beside him, because it was easier to change his bandages that way, and because neither of them wanted the distance anymore. It feels like a betrayal. Of your people? Of everything I've lost. How can I be happy when my sister— Her voice broke. Jacob shifted despite the pain, pulling her close with his good arm. Your sister would want you to live, Ayana. Not just survive, but live. Love isn't a betrayal of grief. It's proof that what we lost mattered enough to make us fight for something good again. He buried her face in his chest, her tears hot against his skin. He held her while she shook. This woman who'd been so fierce, finally allowing herself to break where it was safe. When the storm finally passed, they emerged to find the world transformed. The drought had broken, water standing in every depression, the air smelling green and alive. Jacob's shoulder was a mass of purple and yellow bruises, but he could move it, and Ayana declared he'd heal without permanent damage. They were standing by the repaired fence line, surveying the damage, when riders appeared on the horizon. Jacob's blood went cold when he recognized the lead man, Wade Garrett, who owned the neighboring spread and had been trying to buy Jacob out for years. Garrett was the kind of man who saw the frontier as a place without rules, where might made right. Thornton, Garrett called, reining up with his 3 men flanking him. His eyes slid to Ayana and stayed there, calculating and cold. See, you got yourself a squaw. Careful how you talk about her, Jacob said quietly, his hand moving to the rifle he'd brought. Garrett laughed. Touchy. Look, I'm here on business. That storm did damage all through the valley. I'm buying up the smaller spreads, consolidating. I'll give you a fair price. Not selling. Son, you can barely work one arm. How you gonna run this place? I'll manage. Garrett's expression hardened. I wasn't really asking. He nodded to his men, and they spread out, hands moving to their guns. You sign the deed, or we take it anyway. Your choice. Ayana moved, fast as thought, her knife appearing in her hand. She positioned herself between Jacob and the nearest rider. You want this land? You go through me first. The man actually laughed. Little girl, He didn't finish. Ayana's knife flashed through the air, embedding itself in the horn of his saddle between his legs. The horse reared, throwing him. Next one goes higher, she said calmly. You bitch. The man scrambled up, reaching for his gun. Jacob's rifle shot cracked across the valley. Dirt exploded between the man and Ayanna. "Next one doesn't miss," he said, his voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who'd killed before and would again if necessary. "Get off my land, Garrett. All of you." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Garrett smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're making a mistake, Thornton. I'll be back, and next time I'll bring the law. They don't take kindly to white men shacking up with savages around here." "Then I guess I'd better make it legal," Jacob said. He lowered the rifle slightly, looking at Ayanna. "Marry me." She stared at him. "What?" "You heard me. Marry me. Be my wife, not my guest. Let me stand with you the way you just stood with me." He turned back to Garrett. "And then you can tell the law that Jacob Thornton's wife is off limits, or answer to me for it." Garrett's face went red. "You're insane!" "Maybe, but I'm serious. Now leave before my trigger finger gets itchy." The men left, but their threats hung in the air like the smell of gunpowder. Jacob lowered the rifle. Suddenly aware, his shoulder was screaming in pain from the recoil. Ayanna was there immediately, supporting him. "You proposed to me to spite a land grabber," she said, but her eyes were dancing. "No, I proposed to you because watching you throw that knife made me realize I want to watch you do brave, fierce things for the rest of my life." He cupped her face with his good hand. "I love you, Ayanna. I should have said it sooner, but I'm saying it now. Will you marry me?" She kissed him hard, her hands gentle on his injured shoulder. When she pulled back, she was smiling that rare, transformative smile. "Yes, yes, you foolish, brave man. Yes." They rode into town 3 days later, Jacob still moving stiffly, but determined. The preacher was an old circuit rider who'd seen enough frontier life not to judge. And he married them in the small church, with 2 witnesses pulled from the general store. Ayanna wore a simple blue dress Jacob had bought her, and she'd woven wildflowers into her hair. Jacob wore his one good suit, and when he slipped the ring, his mother's ring, the only thing that survived the fire, onto her finger, his hand was steady. "I do," he said when asked. "I do," she echoed, her voice strong and sure. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife. Son, you may kiss your bride." Jacob did, thoroughly, until the preacher cleared his throat and the witnesses laughed. They signed the papers that made it legal in the eyes of the territory, and then they rode home together as the sun set over the healing land. That night, Ayanna stood at the cabin window, looking out at the stars scattered like diamonds across the black velvet sky. Jacob came up behind her, wrapping his good arm around her waist. "Having second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "No." She leaned back against him. "I was thinking about my father. He used to say that fire doesn't destroy everything. Sometimes it clears the way for new growth." She turned in his arms, touching his face. "You and me, Jacob, we're the new growth, something good coming from the ashes." "Together," he said, the word that had become their promise. "Together," she agreed. Garrett came back a month later, as promised, bringing the territorial marshal. But he found a legally married couple working their land, the ranch already showing signs of recovery from the storm. The marshal, a weathered man who'd served in the war with Jacob's father, took one look at the situation, then at Garrett's angry face, and told him there was no law being broken. "Man's got a right to marry who he chooses," the marshal said, "and this land's deeded legal to Thornton. You got a problem with that?" Take it to the territory court. Otherwise, stop wasting my time." Garrett's face went purple with rage, but he tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Enjoy your little victory, Thornton, but this territory's got a way of sorting out problems like you." His eyes slid to Ayanna with undisguised malice. "Both of you." After they left, Jacob found Ayanna standing in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warmth of the day. "He won't stop," she said quietly. "Men like that never do." Jacob came up behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. "Then we'll be ready. Together, remember?" She turned in his arms, and the fear in her eyes made his chest ache. "Jacob, maybe it would be better if I left, went back to what's left of my people. You'd be safe then, you could—" "No." The word came out harder than he intended. He gentled his voice. "Ayanna, I didn't marry you to keep you safe from gossip or threats. I married you because I can't imagine breathing without you. Whatever comes, we face it side by side." She searched his face for a long moment, then nodded. But Jacob could see the worry still lurking in her honey-colored eyes, and he vowed silently that he'd find a way to make her feel truly secure here. The first real test came 2 weeks later. Jacob had ridden into town for supplies, leaving Ayanna to work on the horse corral they were expanding. She was hammering the last post when she heard riders approaching, not from the main road, but from the blind side of the property, through the scrub oak where the fence line ended. 4 men. Not Garrett's crew, but the type who worked for men like Garrett. Drifters, hired guns, men with nothing to lose and everything to gain from causing trouble. Ayanna set down the hammer slowly, her hand moving to the knife she always kept at her belt now. The rifle was in the barn, 20 yards away, too far. "Well, well," the lead rider said, a man with a scarred face and dead eyes. "Garrett said the squaw would be here alone sometime. Guess today's our lucky day, boys." "Leave," Ayanna said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This is private property." "Hear that?" Scarface laughed. "She thinks she owns property. That's funny, ain't it? Indians don't own nothing. They just borrow it till white men need it back." They dismounted, spreading out in a practiced pattern that told Ayanna they'd done this before. Her mind raced through options. She could run, but they'd catch her. She could fight, but 4 against 1 meant she'd lose eventually. She could scream, but the nearest neighbor was miles away. Or she could be smart. "Garrett sent you," she said, backing toward the barn slowly. "How much is he paying?" "Enough," another man said, younger than Scarface, but with the same cold eyes. "We're supposed to scare you off, make you understand you're not welcome here." "And if scaring doesn't work?" Ayanna asked, still backing up, trying to keep them all in her line of sight. Scarface grinned. "Then we get creative. Garrett don't care what happens to you, long as you're gone." "I see," closing around the barn door handle behind her. "And did Garrett mention that my husband is a war veteran? That he killed 17 men in battle and doesn't hesitate when someone threatens what's his?" "Your husband ain't here, sweetheart." "No," Ayanna agreed, "but his friends are." She threw herself backward, through the barn door, just as the first man lunged for her. The door slammed shut, and she grabbed the rifle she'd left just inside. Not a coincidence, but a precaution she'd taken every day since Garrett's visit. "You got 1 shot before we get through that door," Scarface yelled. "And there's 4 of us." Ayanna's hands were steady as she climbed the ladder to the loft, rifle slung across her back. She'd learned from her father that height was advantage, and from Jacob that sometimes the best defense was making your enemy hesitate. She could hear them arguing outside, trying to decide their approach. She used the time to position herself where she could see all the barn's entrances through gaps in the boards. When they finally rushed the door, she was ready. The rifle shot took the hat off the first man through. He screamed and dove for cover. "Next one goes through flesh," Ayanna shouted. "I've got 17 rounds, and I'm a better shot than my husband. Your choice. Leave now, or find out if I'm bluffing." "Shh." "She's bluffing," one of them muttered. The second shot took the weather vane off the roof, the metal spinning away with a screech. 15 rounds left," Ayanna called. "Still think I'm bluffing?" "We could burn her out," the young one suggested, "and bring every rancher in the territory down on us when they see the smoke." Scarface sounded uncertain now. "Garrett said this would be easy." "Does this look easy?" Ayanna demanded. "I'm Apache. We've been fighting to defend our homes for generations. You think 4 hired guns scare me?" She fired again, this time putting a hole through the water trough, sending a spray of water over the men taking cover behind it. They scrambled back, cursing. "I've got all day and all the ammunition," Ayanna continued, her voice carrying the absolute conviction of someone who meant every word. "My husband will be home in 2 hours. When he gets here and sees what you tried, he'll hunt you down like the dogs you are. Or you can leave now, tell Garrett this didn't work, and live to spend whatever he paid you." There was a long silence. Then Scarface stood up, hands visible. "You're crazy, you know that?" "No, I'm done being a victim." Ayanna kept the rifle trained on him. "Now ride out, or I start shooting for real." They left, mounting up and disappearing the way they'd come. Ayanna stayed in the loft for another 30 minutes, rifle ready, making sure it wasn't a trick. Only when she was certain they were truly gone did she climb down, her hands finally starting to shake with the aftermath of fear and adrenaline. She was sitting on the porch steps, rifle across her knees, when Jacob rode up an hour later. He took one look at her face and was off his horse before it had fully stopped. "What happened?" She told him everything. By the end, his face was white with fury and fear. "I should never have left you alone," he said, pacing. "Damn it, Ayanna, they could have." "But they didn't." She stood, catching his arm. "Jacob, stop, I'm fine. I defended our home, and I won. This time." He pulled her close, his heart hammering against her ear. "God, Ayanna, when I think about what could have happened, don't." She pulled back to look at him. "I'm not helpless, Jacob. I'm not some fragile thing that needs constant protection. I'm a warrior's daughter, and I know how to fight for what's mine." He cupped her face in his hands. I know you're strong, but that doesn't mean I won't worry. That doesn't mean the thought of losing you doesn't tear me apart." "Then trust me," she said softly. "Trust that we're stronger together, but that I'm not weak alone either." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, tasting fear and relief and love all mixed together. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "We need to end this with Garrett," he said, "before someone gets killed." "Agreed. But how?" Jacob was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then his eyes lit with determination. "We need allies. The other ranchers, most of them are decent people just trying to survive out here. They've kept their distance because they're not sure about us, but they all have one thing in common." "What's that?" "They all hate Garrett. He's tried to intimidate or buy out every small rancher in the territory. If we can show them that standing together is stronger than standing alone." He trailed off, the plan forming. "We call a meeting. Get everyone together. Make them see that what threatens us today threatens them tomorrow. Ayana considered this, then nodded slowly. It could work, but it's risky. Some of them won't want to associate with, she gestured to herself. With my wife? Jacob's voice held steel. Then they can stay home and wait for Garrett to come for their land next. But I think you'll be surprised. This is the frontier, Ayana. People care more about character than color when their livelihood's on the line. The meeting took a week to arrange. Jacob rode to every small ranch within 2 days' ride, extending the invitation. Some doors closed in his face, others listened with suspicion. But a few, enough, agreed to come. They gathered on a Sunday afternoon. 8 ranching families, plus Jacob and Ayana, meeting in the shelter of a box canyon on neutral ground. The Hendersons, who ran cattle to the north. The Yamamotos, a Japanese couple who'd bought land after the war. The Schmidts, German immigrants with 6 children. The Porters, an older black couple who'd homesteaded 5 years back. The McCalls, Irish brothers who shared a spread. And 3 single men, Tom Reeves, Samuel Clay, and Patrick O'Malley, each trying to make it alone. Jacob stood before them, Ayana at his side, and told the truth. Garrett's been picking us off one by one, he said, threatening, intimidating, buying up land from people too scared to say no. He came after me because I've got water rights he wants. He sent men after my wife because he thought she was the weak point. He paused, letting that sink in. He was wrong. But the point is, none of us are safe alone. Together, though, together we're something he can't break. Why should we care about your problems with Garrett? One of the McCall brothers asked. But his tone was more curious than hostile. Because I won't be the last, Jacob replied. How many of you has he approached? How many has he tried to buy out or scare off? Slowly, hands rose. All of them. Every single rancher there had been targeted. There's your answer, Ayana said, speaking up for the first time. Her voice carried clearly in the canyon. Alone, you wait for him to come. Together, you tell him he's not welcome. Mrs. Henderson, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, studied Ayana carefully. You're Apache. I am. My husband's brother was killed in a raid 5 years back. The tension ratcheted up instantly. Jacob moved closer to Ayana, but she held up a hand, stopping him. I'm sorry for your loss, Ayana said quietly. I lost my father and sister to soldiers 2 months ago. My whole family is gone, except for one uncle. She met Mrs. Henderson's eyes steadily. We've all lost people in this territory. We can keep killing each other over old wounds, or we can try to build something better. Your choice. The 2 women stared at each other for a long moment. Then Mrs. Henderson nodded once, sharp and decisive. Fair enough. What's your plan, Thornton? They talked for hours, voices sometimes raised in argument, but gradually coalescing around a strategy. They would band together formally, create a ranchers' association with bylaws and rules. They'd post watch on each other's properties, share resources during hardship, present a united front to territorial authorities, and most importantly, they'd make it clear to Wade Garrett that his intimidation tactics were over. He'll fight this, Samuel Clay warned. He's got money, hired guns, connections. Then we fight back, Patrick O'Malley said, his Irish accent thick with determination. I didn't come all the way to America to be pushed around by another landlord. Mr. Yamamoto, who'd been quiet until now, spoke softly. In my country we have a saying, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. But here, I learned something new. When all the nails stand together, they hold up the house. That got murmurs of agreement, and Jacob felt hope kindle in his chest. They were doing this. It was actually happening. As the meeting broke up, several ranchers came to speak with Ayanna directly. Mrs. Henderson asked about her knowledge of finding water. Young Schmidt boy wanted to know if she could really shoot, as well as the stories said. Tom Reeves, looking embarrassed, admitted his horse had been acting strange and wondered if she'd take a look, since he'd heard she had a way with animals. Ayanna handled each interaction with quiet grace, and Jacob watched his wife become not just tolerated, but respected, accepted. It made something fierce and protective rise in his chest. On the ride home, Ayanna was quiet, staring at the stars emerging in the twilight sky. "What are you thinking?" Jacob asked. "That maybe we started something bigger than just protecting our ranch today," she said slowly. "That maybe this is how things change, not through big battles, but through small communities deciding to see each other as people first." "Could be." Jacob reached over, taking her hand. "Either way, you were magnificent. Mrs. Henderson looks tough, but you didn't flinch." Ayanna laughed softly. "She is tough. I like her. She reminds me of my mother. No nonsense, but fair." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for this, for not hiding me away, or treating me like I needed to be protected from everyone's judgment. You're my partner, Ayanna. That means standing beside me, not behind me." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. Then Ayanna spoke again. "Garrett won't like this. The association, I mean. It threatens everything he's trying to build." "I know, which means he'll escalate." Jacob's jaw tightened. "We need to be ready." They didn't have to wait long. 3 days after the meeting, fire broke out in the McCall's barn. It was pure luck that Patrick O'Malley happened to be visiting, helping with a difficult calving, and saw the smoke early enough to save most of the livestock. When Jacob and Ayanna rode over to help, they found more than just fire damage. Someone had cut the fence line, run off half the cattle, and left a message painted on what remained of the barn wall. "Associations don't stop bullets." The McCalls were devastated, but defiant. "This just makes me more determined." Brian McCall said, soot-stained and exhausted, "We rebuild, and we don't back down." "Agreed," Jacob said. "But we also need to be smarter. Garrett's showing us he'll use violence now. We need to document everything. Get the territorial authorities involved, officially." "And what good will that do?" Patrick asked bitterly. "The law's a week's ride away, and by the time they get here, Garrett'll have covered his tracks." "Then we set a trap," Ayanna said. Everyone turned to look at her. "He thinks we're soft targets because we're farmers, not fighters. We let him keep thinking that. But next time he sends men to cause trouble, we're ready. We catch them in the act, hold them for the marshal, and make them testify against Garrett." "That's dangerous," Mrs. Sullivan. Henderson said she'd ridden over as soon as word spread. "Somebody could get killed." "Somebody could get killed anyway," Ayanna replied. "At least this way we're in control." They debated late into the night, but eventually agreed. They'd set up rotating watches on the most vulnerable properties. They'd prepare evidence boxes documenting every incident. And they'd be ready to defend themselves if necessary, but always with witnesses, always by the book. The chance came 2 weeks later, at the Hendersons' place. Ayanna was on watch, hidden in the loft of their barn with Tom Reeves as her partner. It was 3 in the morning, the darkest part of night, when they heard horses approaching quietly. 5 men, moving with the careful stealth of those up to no good. They had torches and accelerant, clearly planning another fire. Ayanna touched Tom's arm, signaling him to stay quiet. They'd planned for this. Samuel Clay and Patrick O'Malley were hidden in positions around the property. The Hendersons were awake in their house, armed and ready. Jacob was with them, his rifle loaded. One of them, Ayanna recognized him as one of Garrett's regular hands, gave orders. Make it quick. Set the fire, scatter the horses, and we're gone before anyone wakes up. What if they do wake up? One of the others asked nervously. Then we make sure they can't identify us. That was threat enough. Ayanna raised her rifle, sighting carefully on the lantern hanging near the barn door. Not on any person. She wanted to spook them, not kill anyone if she could help it. Her shot shattered the lantern, sending glass and oil flying. The men jumped, cursing and scrambling for their weapons. Don't move, Jacob's voice rang out from the house. We've got you surrounded and witnesses documenting everything. Reach for those guns and we will shoot to defend our property. For a frozen moment, no one moved. Then one of the men made a break for his horse. Patrick O'Malley stepped out of the shadows, rifle raised. I wouldn't. We really do have you surrounded, and we really will shoot if you run. The man who'd given the orders, Garrett's hand, spat in the dirt. You can't prove anything. We're just passing through. With torches and accelerant at 3 in the morning, Mrs. Henderson emerged from her house, her own rifle steady in her hands. That's an interesting way to pass through, Mr. Dalton. I recognize you. You work for Garrett. So what? That don't mean... It means we've got 5 witnesses who'll swear you were here to burn down my barn. Mrs. Henderson cut him off. Now you boys have 2 choices. You can come quiet and tell the marshal who sent you, or you can try to run, and we'll defend our property the way the law allows. The fight went out of them then. Faced with determined, organized resistance instead of frightened victims, they had no real strategy. Within minutes, they were disarmed and tied up. Their confession, given to avoid being shot as arsonists, documented by 3 witnesses. Jacob looked at Ayanna across the Henderson property, and even in the darkness, she could see his pride and relief. We did it, she said quietly. You did it, he corrected. This was your idea, your strategy. Our strategy, she countered. Together, remember? The smile he gave her was worth everything. Every fight, every fear, every hard-won victory. The marshal came, finally, a week later. By then, they had not only the confessions, but documented evidence of multiple attacks, financial records showing Garrett's attempts to buy up land at unfair prices, and testimony from a dozen ranchers about intimidation and threats. Wade Garrett was arrested on charges of arson, conspiracy, and attempted land fraud. His trial would take months, but in the meantime, he was out of their lives. The territory seemed to breathe easier. The Ranchers Association grew, adding new members as word spread about their success. The other ranchers kept their distance at first, but when word spread about how the Thorntons, both of them, had defended their land, respect slowly replaced suspicion. Ayanna proved to be an exceptional rancher. She had an instinct for the land that Jacob had never developed, knowing where to find water, which areas would support grazing, how to read the weather in the flight of birds. Under her guidance, the ranch began not just to survive, but to thrive. She also taught Jacob things she'd learned from her father: how to track, how to move silently through the brush, how to find food where he thought there was none. In return, he taught her to read and write, the 2 of them spending evenings with books he'd salvaged from his family home. Her bent over a slate while he corrected her letters with patient encouragement. The first winter was hard. They ran low on supplies, and Jacob's old war wound ached in the cold. But they had each other, and somehow that made everything bearable. They'd lie wrapped together against the mountain chill, telling stories and planning for the spring. "I want to plant an orchard," Ayana said one night, her breath frosting in the air. "Apple trees, maybe peach. My mother told me stories of the orchards in the old mission lands." "Then we'll plant an orchard," Jacob promised. "Whatever you want, I'll find a way to give you." She kissed him softly. "You already gave me everything. You gave me back myself." Spring came, and with it, an unexpected visitor. Ayana was in the garden when she heard the horse approach. She looked up to find an Apache man watching her from the tree line. Old, weathered, with eyes that saw too much. "Uncle," she breathed, dropping her basket and running to him. Jacob came out of the barn at her cry, rifle ready, but relaxed when he saw the embrace. The old man, Ayana's father's brother as it turned out, had been searching for her since the attack. They sat together for hours, speaking in Apache while Jacob gave them space. When Ayana finally came to find him, her eyes were red but peaceful. "He thought I was dead," she said. "My whole family. He thought everyone was gone. Now he knows I survived." She took Jacob's hand. "I told him about you, about us. And he says any man willing to face down armed thieves with one working arm for his wife is a man worth respecting, regardless of his skin." She smiled. "He gave us his blessing." The old man stayed for a week, teaching them both Apache customs and listening to their plans for the future. When he left, he clasped Jacob's arm in a warrior's grip. "Protect her fire," he said in careful English. "It's what makes her who she is." "With my life," Jacob promised. The years that followed brought their share of troubles. Drought again, harsh winters, cattle fever, a fire that took the new barn. But they faced each challenge together, their partnership deepening into something unshakable. Ayana never forgot her sister or her parents, keeping their memory alive in the songs she sang and the stories she told. But she also built new memories, new joy, until the pain of loss was balanced by the fullness of the life she'd chosen. 5 years after that storm-tossed night, Jacob stood on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching the sun rise over land that was finally, truly prosperous. The orchard Ayana had wanted bloomed white and pink in the spring air. Cattle dotted the hills, horses grazed in good pasture, and the barn, rebuilt better than before, stood solid against the morning light. Inside, he could hear Ayana singing softly, that wordless melody she'd hummed when she first started to heal. The sound wrapped around his heart like a promise kept. She emerged carrying their daughter, 2 years old, with her mother's honey eyes and her father's stubborn chin, and came to stand beside him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Jacob pulled her close, kissing the top of their daughter's head. "That I was an orphan rancher just trying to survive. And then a fierce Apache girl stumbled into my life, and her fire awoke my soul." He looked at his wife, at the woman who'd chosen to build a life with him despite everything the world had tried to take from them both. "I'm thinking I'm the luckiest man alive." Ayana smiled, that beautiful, rare smile that still made his breath catch. "We're both lucky. We found each other when we most needed finding." "Together," their daughter said, parroting the words she'd heard her parents say countless times. They laughed, the sound carrying across the land they'd fought for, the home they built, the future they were creating one day at a time. "Yes, little one," Ayana said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Together, always together." The sun climbed higher, painting the Arizona sky in shades of gold and crimson, and the Thornton family stood together on their porch. Proof that love could grow even in the harshest soil, that hope could survive the worst storms, and that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Jacob and Ayana's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.